right, so hi everyone. I'm Peter Ng, and welcome back to Catching Up, the podcast where conversations don't end when the bell rings. Today I'm reconnecting with Carter Benson, who's now a raft guide in Montana, quite a distance from Orlando, Florida. I'm very eager to hear how you found yourself over in what'd you call that, the Midwest?
It's like kind of the Midwest. It's like northern, I don't know. Yeah. Like the
Okay,
top
I
of the
mean
Midwest.
it's definitely no sunny Florida or Peninsula Florida, so it's a little out of my norm for geography.
hmm
Uh, but I saw from your guest form, you said you had experienced some recent heartbreak. Was that something you wanted to dive a little deeper into in our conversation?
Yeah. Yeah, I think so. You know?
Okay. All right. Well, it's I'm definitely curious to see where this conversation goes. But let's just get into it then. How have you been? It's been a long time. I was looking at
It
your
has.
information, and you graduated 2022. So
Mhm.
if my math is correct, you were a sophomore when you took my class.
I was indeed, yeah. It
Wow,
was the end of, I think it was like in March of when I was in your class that COVID happened and we had to
that's right,
do virtual for that, like that last semester of school. It was
man. So
pretty crazy.
it was really just a total change up, because we got sent home and we never saw each other in person for the rest of the semester, right?
No, yeah. It just like one day
Wow.
happened and like, yeah.
Okay, so yeah, it was quite a lot. I don't know how much your teachers were like sharing this with you guys, but I try to be honest about this, but it was very much a building the road as you're driving
Mm.
situation. We didn't really have any contingency plans, and I'm not trying to talk bad about my school or the district, but in reality is I don't think many teachers across the country really were prepared for the circumstances. Um,
Mhm.
and most of us were like, oh, this will just be a couple weeks maximum. And then, you
Yeah.
saw how the next school year was.
Yeah,
Half
the
the
next
school
school
wasn't
year
even on
was
campus.
awful. Oh my god, that was a
Yeah.
terrible year.
Were you on campus in the following year?
I think I showed up the 2nd semester of
Okay.
my junior year. Yeah, I believe so. Because I was like, "I can't do virtual anymore, man. Send me back.
Right, right, right.
I'll do whatever."
It
Um
is truly one of those things that, I think a lot of kids understandably get upset or get frustrated with the school system and
mm,
have that question of like, is this my thing or why do we have to do this? But when you're in a
mhm,
situation where you're stuck at home nonstop, I think it kind of realize makes you realize like, especially the social aspect of it,
mhm. Yeah,
and getting to
absolutely.
spend time with friends. Wow.
Absolutely. I was excited. I was like, "Oh, I'm gonna be home all the time. I'll be able to, just play video games all the time." But like,
Right, right.
and then you're just like alone all the time with like your family, and it's like, man, okay, get me out of here. I want to see my friends and have real human interactions again. And yeah,
That
just
cabin fever kicks in real quick. So
oh
I
yeah.
feel you. For the people listening at home, I mean, we kind of already got that out there, but how do we know each other?
You were my anatomy and physiology teacher my sophomore year. Um, and it was one of the like, probably, like, one of my favorite classes of all of high
Oh,
school.
I
Like, it was
appreciate it. Thank you.
amazing. Like, it was such a good class. Um
I think you were in my old classroom because I ended up moving classes just one room down. But I
Really?
think, yeah, I think right around that time, yeah, for sure, because the other teachers I taught with, they retired not too long post COVID.
Mm,
So yeah, you were one of the last classes I had in that original classroom. Now in a slightly larger classroom, I think with a couch
mhm.
was there, right?
Yeah, the couch was there. I love that
Yeah, yeah,
couch, man.
yeah.
Oh my god.
That'll have to be a story for another time, but unfortunately, the couch is not a thing any longer.
No,
But
that
I
the
took a lot of
variable
pride.
seating the variable
Yeah,
seating was
yeah, just
amazing. I loved that aspect of the class. Like, you could just sit wherever and, like, there was so many different options. It was awesome. It was
for
amazing.
sure. I was a big proponent of, and I still am, but I was a big proponent of flexibility and wanting you to feel comfortable, because
Mhm.
I don't think anyone truly can get in that learning mindset if they're not even comfortable in the class they're in.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
and that's been my major philosophy. If someone's like, I hate it here, how am I going to expect them to learn about the human body for 50 minutes or so? Um,
Exactly, yeah.
so I have a question. I'm kind of like figuring out different segments and stuff, and I think something kind of fun, especially with my background as an educator, is starting things off with, what did you learn today? So it doesn't have to be
Mm,
academic in nature, and I can start if you want me to go first.
yeah, I'm absolutely. Like, what have
Okay,
you learned
so
today?
I was listening to a podcast on the way home. Funny enough, I'm a big.
What podcast?
It was the it's a comedy slash informative podcast, but it's called The Downside with John Marco Cerezi. I'm a big fan of his comedy. But he had a guest on, and she was talking a lot about different things that she's been experiencing. And she shared some information about a plastic surgery procedure that is apparently all the rage in Hollywood now, called an upper blef, BLEF. It's like the shorthand is
Huh.
called a blef, but the
Yeah.
medical terminology is a blepharoplasty. And of course, I'm like, what the heck is that? I've never heard of that before. But it's when they take extra skin from your eyelids to like tighten your face. Um,
Oh,
and they were
what?
talking about it in context of Jim Carrey. I don't know if you saw his recent photos.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
A little odd. And I know this is how Hollywood's been for such a long time, of fascinating with, or obsession with, our look and how we perceive ourselves.
Mhm.
But that's what I learned. What this procedure is, it's pulling the eyelids up technically.
Nice.
Um, so Carter, what is something you might have learned today?
I have learned that we were talking about this a little bit, but I just got a tattoo today.
Mm.
I learned that they don't hurt as bad as everyone says they do. Like
Was this your
there
first
were
tattoo?
yeah, my first
Oh,
tattoo. There was like a couple moments where like I winced a little bit, but like all in all, like it was not that painful. Like people I feel like over exaggerate sometimes. I mean, like it depends on where it is, and some tattoos can really hurt, but like I learned what a tattoo feels like, and
sure.
it's pretty chill.
Do you remember the tattoo assignment we do in class where we are designing our dream tattoos?
Yeah, I do remember that actually. Oh my gosh, I do remember that. I don't remember. I think I drew an octopus or something like that. I don't know.
Okay.
I liked your tattoos. So
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I have an octopus on my
I
ankle.
really like your avatar tattoo. That is like the
I
coolest thing
appreciate it.
ever.
Thank you. Thank you. What'd you end up getting, if you don't mind me asking?
I got a blue heron with
Mm.
some mountain laurel flowers around it. Um kind of to signify and kind of just like, embody my time in North Carolina. We can talk
Oh,
about
so
that later, but yeah.
you've been all over. Okay, wow. Very
Yeah,
cool.
yeah, yeah.
Okay, nice. Um, so I guess we can start transitioning into that. You now live in Montana. You
hmm
previously were in North Carolina. Was North Carolina your first stopping point post Timber Creek?
Um, so after Timber Creek, I went to Fort Myers actually to FGCU
Okay.
college. I changed my major. I kid you not, 9 times. Um,
Mhm.
and yeah, I was there. So freshman year, and then the summer in between freshman and sophomore year of college, I just worked at job at my dad's house, and then did sophomore year. The summer in between sophomore and junior year, though, I went up to North Carolina as a raft guide out on the Nantahala River. And it completely just changed my life. Like I had never experienced a job that was so fun. Like just like being out by myself, like not really having to worry about anything like school or anything like that, just kind of
Sure.
focusing on myself. And it was just amazing. And then I went back to school. I went back to FGCU that next for the fall semester, and I was like, I can't do this anymore. Like I gotta go back out there. So I finished up my fall semester and I got my associate's degree. And then I left. The spring semester, I just worked in Orlando, just saving up a little bit of money, and then this past summer I went back to North Carolina to raft guide, and now I'm in Montana, doing winter seasonal work as a ski valet out at like some fancy 5-star hotel,
Wow.
um, and just snowboarding and all the time. It's awesome. And yeah, I'm about to head back to Florida for a little bit, and then my next
Oh,
stop
cool.
is Montgomery, Alabama. There's a whitewater center, and I'm gonna do whitewater in Alabama for the foreseeable future.
Okay. So when you were at Florida Gulf Coast, what you said you changed your majors a bunch of times. What was the final major you
hmm
got when you got your AA?
Psychology.
Okay.
I started out with psychology and it ended up with psychology, but I changed it like 8 times in between.
I
Um,
think that's very normal.
yeah.
It's unrealistic for people to have everything so settled or situated in high
hmm
school as a teenager and just kind of saying like, all right, hope you have your life planned out.
Yeah.
It
Yeah. I
didn't work that way
mean,
for me, and it rarely works that way for anyone.
yeah, no, I like three of my major changes were in education because I really wanted to do teaching. But then I
Mm,
realized in Florida, you don't need a degree in education to be a teacher. So I was like, why would I be spending all this money
yeah,
on a degree for teaching when I could just get a degree that could be more versatile and still do teaching?
sure.
And I did, I had a stats major at some point. I had digital media design, just a whole bunch of different stuff. And I couldn't figure out what I wanted to do.
Mhm.
And then I went to North Carolina that summer and I was like, wow, I don't want to do this at all. Like that's what I want to do. Like I just don't want to do this. Like school's always been something for me that just kind of didn't really click.
Yeah.
But just like making that decision to like leave school and like just get my associate's degree and like not finish out with that bachelor's, like really like that was probably the toughest decision I've ever made, and it like weighed on me a lot. But like that was probably the best decision I also made in my life.
And I
Like
really
hands
want to dive
down.
deeper into that because I think there's been a assumption of what success looks like for everyone, and
Mm-hmm.
we're kind of conditioned, especially where we live, to believe that if you don't do certain things a certain way, um, you're not going to succeed or you're not going to be happy. And I've met many people who do the traditional 4 year, 4+ year college experience, and they're kind of aimless.
Yeah.
So it sounds like you've been fortunate enough that you found a little more of that guidance earlier in life,
Yeah.
and that's helped provide for you that level of clarity, which is
Mm-hmm.
incredible. And I definitely want to dive a little bit deeper into that. Before we kind of take a look back in our past, um, don't want to jump too far off the topic, but you mentioned earlier in the start of our conversation you had some heartbreak. How recent did this happen?
Pretty recently. I would so my first summer that I went to North Carolina to raft guide, I met this girl. And you know, things were, good. We were talking, we were, you know, what situationship, I guess you could call it.
Sure.
Um, I wanted dating. We kind of like were more serious towards the end of the summer, but I was going back to school and she was going back to her where she was from, which is Atlanta. And so we, broke things off after that summer. And that kind of, tore me up a little bit, just because, we were like kind of like in a relationship, and then got back together the next summer because we both ended up coming back to Raft Guide.
Mm,
And so we were like, hey, I want to do this again. Like, I want to try seriously, like the first time it was like a summer fling sort of thing. Like we weren't like we knew it was over when the summer like was over. Like we like
sure.
from the beginning we were like it's over when the summer's over. But I got, really attached and, kind of whatever. But that next like this most recent summer we like met up again and we had a conversation and we're like, yeah, like we want to try this again. and it's been on and off a little bit. Like we broke up like twice during the summer, but it seemed like we wanted to keep making things work and working on things. So like we would. And then
Yeah.
I decided, and then, we came out here together. We like caravanned up here, big road trip. It was fun. But
You guys moved to Montana together?
yeah, yeah, she
Wow.
lived like right next door. We work in the same department, all the same coworkers and everything. And yeah, and so, but once we got to Montana, let me, I also should preface this by saying that that first summer that we were together, she was very emotionally unavailable because
Hmm.
she was, I think, 2 months fresh out of a 5 year long relationship.
Hmm.
Um, and so yeah, that not a good
Sure. Yeah,
foundation
sure.
really. And but once
Right.
we got to Montana, like we just kind of like we worked on a lot of stuff in North Carolina. We like worked really hard to make things work, talked about a lot of stuff, and we made a lot of progress. And once we came up to Montana together, like just things just devolved back to how they were at the beginning, and it just wasn't very, whatever. And like the last time we broke up, I said like this is the last time. Like if we
Yeah.
break up again, like that's it. And and then she just kind of was pulling away more and more, and then one day she just was like, "Hey, like we're breaking up." I was like, "Okay,"
Right.
like I felt like a wave of relief a little bit because I've
Hmm.
been anxious, stressing, like I can tell she was pulling away, but it just it hurt, and that was about a month ago. That was a week before Valentine's Day,
Oh,
so
bad
yeah,
timing.
yeah, absolutely bad timing, and like we still had to work together for like
Mm.
for a while. And I was supposed to actually be in Montana until April 17th, but I'm leaving in a week just because there's nothing really here anymore. I mean,
Yeah.
like since we broke up, I was real broken up and I was really upset and all this
Well, it
stuff.
gives you
And
some distance as well.
yeah, some distance. We worked in the same department, see all the same people. But like two weeks after we broke up, she was already like quote unquote dating one of our coworkers, and
Yeah.
like everyone, it's a tiny town, and like still is, but it's just like when that happens it's like come on.
Right.
And like
Yeah.
I was obviously broken up about it and very upset, and she was obviously not at all. Like she did not care really, like very like avoidant behavior, and just it is what it
Sure.
is. But
I
it's
don't
one of those
pretend to
things.
be. Yeah, yeah, and I don't pretend to be a relationship expert or anything, but if I can give some wise advice in my years, I guess what I've learned through my life and through the things I've experienced is oftentimes if you're not in a good place yourself, if you're not in a position of growth yourself, it's unfair to assume that being in a relationship will fix that.
Yeah.
Um, there's nothing wrong in saying that people can grow together. I think that happens naturally all
hmm
the time.
Yeah.
But many times people have to figure things out on their own before they're truly ready to establish something like that with someone else. And,
hmm
ultimately, you're young. Ultimately,
Yeah.
it's still a growing and learning opportunity.
Yeah.
So it's still something you can take from it.
Yeah,
But I'm
exactly.
glad that you'll have some time away soon to kind of let your mind get a little bit of
Yeah.
distance and physically
I'm
and mentally.
yeah, I'm excited to kind of get away, but I just, I was like giving a lot, and I was trying so hard to, keep this thing going. And it like, I because we're talking and we're having this interview, but like I hadn't thought about this in a long time. But I'm sure when I was a senior in high school, I would visit your room
Yep.
with my partner at the time, who was also one
Hmm.
of your students. And
I remember.
it
Yeah, I
makes
remember.
yeah, it makes me think of that relationship and how I also was, doing the same sort of thing. It was much more self-destructive in that relationship because she went to the UK while I went to FGCU like our freshman year.
Right.
And so it was like 8 hour time difference. And I was being, you know, staying up till like 5 in the morning to talk to her during her time and, all this stuff and like just doing whatever I could to keep this alive, even at the detriment of myself. And this relationship also made me like think about that of how like I tend to, you know, put others like ahead of myself and like giving more than receiving. And it's just like I hadn't thought about it in so long, but when we scheduled the interview, I thought about it a little bit and I'm like, huh, like that's something I can, look back on and
These are
reflect
things,
on. Yeah.
yeah, these are things that aren't necessarily indicative of being a quote unquote bad person or anything
Mhm.
close to that. It's just,
Mhm.
I've been in that position myself often where you feel like you want to be the person to please. And
Mhm.
it's very easy to fall into a trap of not getting the attention or being a little bit selfish, honestly, and saying, I need to do this for me.
Mhm.
Um, and it's part of growing up.
Yeah.
It's part of growing up. But I do like that you brought this up. So let's try to take a little bit of a time, take a little bit of a time machine in a way, and think back to our time back in high school.
Oh
So
man.
you were already in that mindset back then. Let's say like 16. I think by 16 you were what, like a sophomore, junior
Yeah,
around then.
sophomore. Yeah, yeah.
Okay. What did you picture your life looking like? So right now, how old are you, Carter?
Right now I'm 21 and I will be turning 22 very, very soon.
Okay, well, happy early birthday.
Thank you.
But when you were 16, and let's say you thought ahead for the next 5 years,
Mhm.
where did you think life was going to be?
In all honesty, I I feel like for me, I just completely just block like I tried to avoid thinking about that as much as I
Mm,
possibly could at 16. Like even in college, while I was currently doing major related classes and everything, I still was like just avoiding thinking about my future and what I wanted to do just cuz like it was so overwhelming. Like I like it's like asking an 18-year-old, 16-year-old kid like where they like what they planned on doing. I was just like, what the heck? But I think at 16, I was, still thinking I was going to be in college. I think I think I knew that, I was like, I hoped I figured out what I wanted to do by that point, but I had no clue what I wanted to do or what direction I wanted to take. I just knew you got to go to college, I was like, you got to go to
sure.
college, you got to get the degree. And so I think I viewed myself in college and just, doing what I was quote unquote supposed to do without really much of a thought of as to what would, make me happy or what would, you know, bring me fulfillment.
Mm.
I think I just viewed myself as like, okay, I just got to do the thing I got to do, you know, get the job, make
Basically,
money. Yeah,
following the order or the steps that we're kind of expected to do.
exactly. Yeah.
Okay. Um, so I think that again, I feel like that's very normal for a lot of people in their teenage years to kind of have more of a day to day mindset of I'm just trying to get through today, man, and
Yeah.
not really thinking too far ahead as far as 5 year, 10 year plans. But when you
Yeah.
think back to Carter in high school, is there anything that you felt confident about? Like, was there something that you felt like I'm really good at this, or this is something I'm naturally inclined at?
I felt confident in, I would say, like, I felt confident in how extroverted I was and how much of a like people person I was, like how I could talk to people. Um, but at the same time, I also felt very insecure about how loud I was and extroverted because I would get in trouble constantly in school,
Hmm.
and my teachers would tell me to be quiet, and
I don't think
they
you
would,
ever got in trouble in my class for what it's
no, I
worth.
No, yeah, that's why your class is probably like one of my favorites because you let me do my thing and you let me kind of like just like I think I was very like self assured kind of like okay like whatever happens I got it, but I didn't really know what I was doing, but I was like I'll figure it out.
I see. Okay.
Yeah,
So yeah, you felt confident in the ability to express yourself, but that also came with its own level of challenges and
yeah,
expectations, I guess, of
hmm,
how your teachers may have viewed you and
yeah,
potentially getting in any trouble or
yeah,
repercussions.
and like and like other students, ostracization and all that stuff, and you know, but
Did you ever feel like I don't I know like class clown is a trope
hmm.
of people we think of when we think of like cliques and cliches and in classroom settings. But did you ever feel like that was the role you were filling or how like
Yeah,
maybe others oh okay so you
yeah,
definitely
one
thought that
100% in my classes, and yeah,
way. Okay,
100%, yeah.
gotcha.
I
I
like,
mean, look,
yeah.
nothing wrong with being having a little bit of levity and
Hmm.
enjoying in the laughs. Um, from my memory, and look, it's been a decade now of me doing this. From my memory, I don't have a single time I can think where I was like, okay, you're just getting on my nerves. Um, I've had my fair share of class clown type kids. And
Hmm.
honestly, I really do enjoy those types of students because I can feed off of that energy and
Hmm.
work and bounce off of that. Obviously, there's a point where I think it gets distracting or it's interrupting things, but
Yeah.
I, rarely does that ever happen, and I certainly don't recall that from you. So
Hmm.
um,
Not in your class.
it's not in my
Yeah.
class. Yeah, exactly. I
Yeah.
can't speak for your other teachers. Okay,
Yeah.
okay. Um, let's move on a little bit to a little bit of more into your shifts and like where things kind of develop. So you teased this earlier in our discussion. You said that you went to North Carolina on a rafting trip. Was that with your dad, right?
I went to North Carolina to work as a raft guide in between my sophomore and junior year of
That's what
college.
it was. Okay.
Yeah, and I just googled like I did go on a rafting trip back in like 2021, I think. And I remember the raft guide was like, "Oh yeah, by the way, there's staff housing. So if you need a job, there's housing here, so you don't got to worry about that." I was like, "Interesting." And that summer, I was like, I don't want to do what I did last summer and just be in Sarasota, Tampa, and like just work all summer and like,
Sure.
not really have any fun. So I was like, I got to get out of Florida. I was like, I got to do something. I got to get out of Florida for the summer. And I thought of that job and I was like, might as well apply. And they called me back and I got the job and I was like, nice.
Okay.
And
Okay.
that first summer, I was actually a zipline guide. I misspoke, but I was a zipline guide my first summer there, and I just ziplined all day, twice a day, and it was awesome. And then yeah, I after that I got the bug. I got the outdoor industry like adventure bug,
Wow.
and
Are
I
you
just
familiar with Bend, Oregon?
yeah. Yeah. I haven't been, but yeah, Oregon's like pretty
My
close by.
father-in-law lives there, and we've gotten a chance to visit him, and it's full of people that love the outdoors. And I'm
Hmm.
certainly someone that likes the outdoors, but then I certainly I get to a point where I'm like, all right, let me get back into my Wi-Fi enabled home.
Yeah,
um,
yeah,
but
yeah.
it sounds like you're a bit of a thrill seeker from what you tell me, because I mean, rafting can certainly there's different degrees
Yeah.
of
Yeah,
difficulty for rafting.
I've seen people die. Like
Wow. Okay.
it's a crazy, yeah. It's a crazy job. It's fun in games most of the time, but it
Mhm.
definitely can have its moments of like, oh crap, like we gotta like lock the hell in. And
Yeah. Yeah.
so it's one of those things. Um I have my wilderness first responder certification, I think I'm gonna get my EMT certification soon, so I can be a wilderness EMT. I think that'd be a pretty cool
Wow. Okay.
thing. Yeah, and I was like learning about stuff, and I was like, oh, I was thinking about you in your class of anatomy and everything.
Yeah.
When I was learning about all that stuff, I was like,
True. There's
I was
some
like,
crossover there.
I was like, I learned about this, and so that was really cool moment. But
Nice.
yeah,
Well,
yeah,
I don't
there's a
want to
lot of
get too dark
adrenaline.
with what you were sharing, but in these extreme moments,
Yeah.
did that ever like sit with you in such a way that I don't know if like traumatizing is the right word to use or
Um, I don't think like it was a little bit jarring. I definitely was shaken up, having to, rescue someone from the water and, like you pull them to the side and, got to perform CPR. And it's just like one of those things where it's just like, holy crap, this is happening right now. But like,
yeah.
there were definitely some people that helped out with like rescues and stuff that like did get shaken up. Like one person had to like leave for the season. Another person had to like take a month off to just kind of, clear their head. I definitely was shaken up for the next like week or so, like week, 2 weeks. But you kind of just are like, it is like what it is. Like it's a dangerous activity and you know, it's terrible, but I know I did what I could. And, as long and like just knowing that I did what I could do. And like because he was already the reason he died was he was a heart attack. Because
Oh,
the water is really cold. It sits about the water on the Nantahala River sits at about 40 degrees year round. And
okay.
so anyone that's really older can get like heart attacks if they like fall in the water, they get like cold shock.
Sure.
And so like once you have a heart attack, like you're already dead. And like all CPR does is just try and bring you back, a little bit. But
Right.
yeah, it just I knew you do what you can.
Yeah, no, of
But yeah,
course. It,
yeah.
it sounds to me like I mean, the ability for you to keep a level head, keep your head
Mhm.
on your shoulders for something like this. It sounds like you've gotten very pragmatic, and just being able to realize the dangers that come with this, but also the enjoyment side of things, and what you really what really gravitates you towards this.
Mhm.
So it's awesome that you're able to push this forward. And like you said earlier, talking about the EMT side of things for the wilderness
Mhm.
application, that's
Yeah.
great. Just applying more skill set and really honing your skills.
Yeah.
Um, so let's go ahead and transition into one of my more signature topics that I like to talk about. What would you tell your past self? So,
Ooh.
if you had the opportunity to sit with Carter Benson at 16, 17 years of age, what would you tell him?
I would man, that's tough. I would probably tell 16, 17-year-old Carter. I would tell him, "Don't go to college." I
Okay,
know you might
fair.
have some students listening to the podcast, that are going to college and everything, and I'm not saying no one should go to college, but for me, I would tell myself, "You don't have to go to college." Like, you know, there were consequences to leaving college, like I'm in, a little bit of debt, but not as much debt as I would have been. My parents stopped supporting me, because they're like, okay, you're out in the real world, have fun, good luck.
Right.
And that was kind of tricky and that was, kind of hard to deal with. But you got to kind of go through those things, to like you gotta just go through it and like it's scary. It was the scariest thing I ever did to leave college, like by far. But it also is the greatest thing I ever did, like for myself. And I would just tell myself, you don't have to go to college. You don't have to follow that, whatever. And I went to North Carolina my first year when I was 20. but I would probably tell myself, once you graduate, Timber Creek, just go do the job that, I did when
Yeah.
I was 20. I'd be like, just start now. Like start when you're 18, you know, and just live your
So
life and explore.
a bit of a leap of faith.
Yeah. Yeah. It's scary and risky, but it's so worth it to just, yeah, do all that stuff.
Okay. Do you think younger you would have believed you? Like, do you think you would have bought in and been like, "Yeah, you're right. I'm just not gonna do this."
Um, I think so. Actually, I think if I told a younger version of me to do that, I think he would, because I think younger me was desperate for something that like drove him. I think I lacked a direction. I lacked a
Mm.
purpose a lot as a kid, I think. And I think that's something I struggled with a lot as a kid, in school, is just like, I didn't know what my 5-year plan was. I didn't know what I wanted to do. And, just thinking about doing more school like made me like so anxious, and I hated the thought of more school, but I was like, well, I got to just do this. But
Yeah.
hearing myself tell myself that there's other options probably, I think, would have helped him a little bit.
Okay. Good to hear. And lastly, now that you've had quite a bit of time outside of high school and outside of that time, is there something you can reflect back on that you're proud of that maybe you didn't see back then?
Um, hmm,
Like something about yourself. It could be something you accomplished, something you did,
yeah,
something you felt,
I
anything of
think,
that nature
yeah,
in that time period.
I think looking back, I would say probably just maintaining integrity and just keeping my head up even when things aren't going my way, or things are, I'm feeling bad about myself for one reason or another, or things happen outside of my life. I think I've been able to go about things really well just because I kind of just held my head up high, and is just like, well, what can you do? Just move on. And just having that like integrity of like, okay, people are going to leave, let them, like people are going to say things, whatever. Like I can't control those things. And just, having that like kind of like level head, and trying to just trying to be a good human being all the time, and just never just not letting the world kind of just break you down, because it can so easily. And
100%.
yeah.
It's important to have that. I think it's a North Star almost to say, at the end of the day, I need to know who I am, and I want to
Hmm.
be that type of person and
Yeah.
continue being that type of person.
Yeah. And just striving
Uh,
to be the best person you can. And people are going to want to try and knock you off that path, and people are going to try
mhm.
and, make you angry and hateful. And you just can't let them. Like,
Right,
you
right.
just, yeah.
Okay. We're almost finishing up here, so I got a couple questions remaining.
Yeah.
Um, you kind of mentioned this already, something you're actively working on. You said you wanted to get your EMT license
Mhm.
for wilderness purposes. Is there anything else you're actively working on?
I'm working on just being okay with me. And I think I'm trying to understand myself more. Um, like why I do certain things the way I do, like what, and like therapy's helped a lot,
Mm,
in that regard. But like just like looking back and reflecting a lot, and just kind of seeing how I ended up the way I did, and just kind of accepting it, and, you know, cherishing it, and not really, running from the things that I'm not proud of or am insecure about, and kind of just trying to face everything head on to try and, just understand myself a little bit better.
Yeah, and I'm turning 35 this year.
Hmm
36, sorry. I'm already 35. I've forgotten how old I am. I realize as well that this process that you're describing is truly a never-ending process.
mm,
Uh, it's not to say that you're always going to be like, what am I doing, or in a total chaotic spiral.
yeah.
However, I think it's healthy to say, hey, what's next? What's the things that I want to keep changing and adapting, and how do I look back at the things that I liked, the things that I didn't like, and how can I hone in on those things that were good, and those things
hmm
that really bring me joy in my life. And I think that's honestly a process that we will live through for our entire lives if you live a relatively fulfilled life. If you're doing something
hmm
that brings you fulfillment,
Yeah.
and it sounds like you're finding that place for you, which is incredible.
hmm I'm trying my best. Yeah.
Yeah, trying your best. Awesome. And the last question. So when we were in school, and I still see a lot of this myself. We're so judged based on a pretty traditional sense of growth and success, as in, like, do you get A's on tests? Do you get
Man.
attend? Are you on time in class? Very things that are very binary. But
Yeah.
now you're in a totally different world.
Yeah.
So how would you say you determine, or how do you describe growth at your stage of life right now?
Ooh, that's good. I think I would describe my stage of growth, ooh, just by like how much I'm learning and like how good of a person I can be and how, you know, good of a friend, how good of a, whatever I can be. And how much I would say like just if I can get through a day and have some good human interactions with other people and help someone out or something else, like I think I did a good job, and obviously, you know no one's perfect. We're going to do things that we're not proud of, but just like, you know reconciling that and just kind of just moving through life in a way with just integrity. And I
Hmm.
think maturity is how I would describe growth. I mean, like back in high school, right? I was not really one to care about grades at all.
Sure.
I had parent teacher conferences every semester, and they all said the same thing. They were like, "Oh, he's smart, but he just doesn't apply himself. He doesn't,
Hmm.
you know." I remember when we were in class, one of the things that really stuck with me was how like I would sleep in class. I think your class was like after, I don't know, some boring class or something. I
I
don't
think it was
know.
after lunch,
Yeah,
maybe.
after lunch, and
Yeah.
it was like sixth period, and I would just like lay my head down. And something I remember was like you would at first when the school year first started, I think you tried to get me. You tried to like be like, Carter, what's this? With my head down, like, I'm like kind of sleeping. I like just put my head up. I'd tell you the answer to the thing, and then I just put my head back down. And I think eventually you just like let me kind of just be and let me do my thing. And that really like I was like, that's probably one of the reasons why like your class is like so great, because like you didn't do this thing that all the other teachers did where they're like grades are what determine how
Right.
successful you are in my class. And so like I actually wanted to learn in your class and I enjoyed what you were teaching, and you kind of like respected me to, like you knew I could do the stuff. So you just kind of let me be. And I really
Yeah.
appreciated that.
I greatly appreciate your kind words. That's something that I think was just an early thing that I adopted in my philosophy as a teacher. Is just, I know that not everyone is going to behave the same way, and act the same way in a classroom. And ultimately, it's not a fight worth fighting if a kid is playing Pokemon, for example, or head might be down because they've had some sleep issues recently. But if I check in on them every once in a while and everything seems good, then we're good. There's
Hmm.
no reason to make the mountains out of molehills, which I know is often the problem that people feel, and they all often can
Yeah,
feel like the figures of authority seemingly have the crosshairs on your back 24/7.
yeah.
No one likes to feel that way.
No, I hated school so much, but just because of like how important that number that letter was, like that letter on your report card or whatever. Like I hated that because I was like, I know this stuff. I just don't care enough to do the homework. And like, that might be, like you got to just do the busy work, but like
Yeah,
I understood it. So I was like, why do I need to do this? I get it. Like this is to practice. I already know. And like, if I couldn't care less about the class, I just wouldn't do it because I just was like,
sure.
there's no point to this. It's painful
And the
and
thing you're
just,
expressing is a thing that has existed in our education system for decades.
yeah. And like,
It's a much larger topic of
I know,
things that can change.
yeah. Yeah,
But
there's like when I was into my education classes, we were like one of the worst ways to figure out what like how apt like someone's aptitude for something is like standardized testing. And then it's like, okay, do standardized testing for everything.
yeah,
Even like it's
this
like
is everything
what?
that's done. Yeah.
Yeah. Like it's
well,
pretty wild.
hey Carter, I don't want to take up too much of your time. We're nearing the end here, so I do want to thank you for being here and for catching up with me today.
Yeah.
Is there any final statements you want to share?
Um, mm, you don't have to go to college. You can choose to be happy. Um, as a RAF guide, I can tell you, money does not equal happiness. It money does not equal happiness. Money equals comfort, and the comfort and happiness are two very different things. I lived in a tent. I lived in a shed in the woods for summers, and I have never been happier. It's not very comfortable, but it's happy. Like it just made do what makes you happy.
Thank you for listening to Catching Up, where conversations continue beyond the classroom. I'll see you next time.